Hi, everyone. This is Steve Ginrich with UT Dallas Office of Research, Associate Vice President for Innovation and Commercialization. It's great to have you here for the Lab to Launch program today. I want to talk about new fall 2021 programs in innovation, commercialization, and entrepreneurship real quick. First, as a reminder, our mission through all of these efforts, the programs, the resources, the funds that we make available, is to enable the next generation's new ventures. That's through the education, empowerment through funding and connections that we have, and then equipping you with the equipment and needs that you have. We're augmenting the programs that we've had for several years with 3 new programs this fall to help UT Dallas Ventures. The first of them is a seminar series we're piloting in our bioengineering area, bioengineering startup training, which we tend to extend to other STEM disciplines for research scientists and faculty at UT Dallas. The second one is the Venture Development Center Jetpack. You'll learn more about that by going to visit the VDC and watching the Jetpack video. And then there's UT Discovery. It's an award for undergraduate research students who are interested in learning about applying their research interests to real-world situations by working with a venture. So hope you can check into any of those programs or all of them and enjoy the Lab to Launch. Thanks.
Good afternoon and welcome to Lab to Launch, the virtual series for researchers interested in pursuing entrepreneurship. My name is Enrica Ziller, Research Education Programs and Outreach Manager in the Office of Research and Innovation at the University of Texas at Dallas. As we move through today's session, I invite you to post questions into the chat for our guest speakers to discuss. Here to guide today's conversation and introduce our guest speaker is our host, Brent Schultz. Brent is the director of the UT Dallas Office of Technology and Commercialization, OTC, and has been with the office since its inception in 2008. He holds an MBA with a concentration in entrepreneurship from UT Dallas and a degree in mechanical engineering from Texas A&M University. Brent has extensive experience in IP management, new technology translation and commercialization, license and contract negotiation, business plan development, and startup mentoring. He also has experience in product ideation and development, mechanical design, manufacturing processes, and semiconductor fabrication. Brent, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Enrica. Hello and welcome to Lab to Launch. Today we have Dr. Robert Rennicker with us to discuss his experience with preparing for, competing in, and winning the research commercialization track of UTD's 2020 Big Idea competition via his startup XNerve Medical. Dr. Robert Rennicker is a neural engineer who has dedicated his life to developing solutions to empower individuals with neurological injuries to realize their life's goals. Dr. Rennicker's team has raised over $48 million in the past 7 years to develop technologies and therapies to treat neurological injuries. The team has participated in 5 clinical trials over the past 7 years, and the team has published over 150 peer-reviewed publications using custom closed-loop preclinical rehabilitation systems developed by the team. The team has designed, developed, and currently manufactures a miniature wireless Class 3 implantable stimulator to enable delivery of targeted plasticity therapy. Dr. Rennicker is a U.S. Marine veteran who served in Operation Sharp Edge, Desert Shield, and Storm, and Provide Comfort from 1988 to 1993, and was awarded multiple accommodations for his service, including the Navy Achievement Medal during Desert Storm. Dr. Rennicker served as the founding director for the Texas Biomedical Device Center from 2012 to 2019, and department chair for the Biomedical Engineering Department at UT Dallas from 2013 to 2019. Dr. Rennicker is currently serving as a professor in neuroscience and bioengineering at UT Dallas. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Dr. Rennicker.
Thank you, Brent. Appreciate the introduction. So I appreciate the invite today. The goal really is to provide some insight into the Big Idea competition, why you might want to compete, how to compete and compete effectively, and what happens after you win. So being a little positive here that there's only going to be one winner, but we're all winners when we participate in this process. I think it was a great process. So for me, the question is, why do you compete? Why would you want to compete? First, the big idea competition will help you prepare for raising funds for your company. If you really are going to do a startup and take some technology out of the university, you need to know how to pitch. You need to know how to prepare to pitch, because without money to start your startup's not going anywhere. And so you're going to spend a lot of your first year or two, and actually a lot of your time, raising funds. And this is a great way to start to learn those skills. Second, the prize money helps you start moving forward. So for us, the prize money allowed us to do some things with legal and lawyers and patents and a bunch of other little things that really helped us move the bar as we got closer to our first seed round. And so it was really helpful in helping us move without significant resources from investors. And so it's a great way to get going. So how to compete? Well, you can go online and you can see all sorts of pitches and all sorts of ideas of how to do it, and most of them are pretty good. And I'm just going to give you a few of the things that I learned through this process, through the help of the VDC team and the people that were help guiding me through the process. First, start on the pitch deck early. If you haven't started, go ahead and get started. It really is important to have a nice, clean pitch deck that so you're not reading the pitch deck, you're talking about the pitch deck, and that's important so you can ask questions, you can field questions, and it's really helps give your audience confidence that you know what you're talking about when you know that pitch deck very well. Watch other pitches, see what you like, what you don't like, what you think's off-putting, what you think's good and helpful. There's a lot of different techniques you can use, and so I recommend using those and finding the ones that fit your personality and your team and your company. The biggest one, I think, and this is some stuff I saw last year and I've seen in the classes that I teach on entrepreneurship and building companies, is a lot of groups focus on their technology and they think they're selling their technology. And you may have a great technology, but if people can't afford it, or nobody's willing to pay for it, or there's another technology that is better than what you have, then you don't really have a business, right? So you've got to focus not on the technology, but you got to focus on the startup. How are you going to return funds to the investors in a timely manner? And how long is it going to take? And what are your milestones? Those sorts of things. So you're pitching a startup, you're pitching a company, you're not pitching a technology. And especially faculty members and people that come up with ideas, we want to focus on what we've invented, but that's only a part of the story. You've got to really focus on the business case. And that's the fourth point here. You need to convince people this is a good investment, not just a great idea, okay? And I'll talk a little bit about how I did that in the competition and how I've done that as we've raised money over the last year. And then finally, just some general comments about your pitch deck. It should be outlined to organize the pitch in a very specific manner. And I'll talk about the way I did it. And, in general, this is the flow most people use, and you can mix it up, but you want to have a flow that makes sense to your investors. So you're not talking about the technology and then talking about what the problems are. You've got to go in a order that people who know nothing about what you're doing can follow. But first, fill in the important points. Use no more than 3 to 4 points per slide. You don't need a lot of text all over the slides. Nobody's going to read it. You're not going to read it. And if you're trying to read it, you're doing it wrong. And then you should have no more than 10 to 12 slides, depending on the competition. Some of these competitions are as fast as 60 seconds, and you get 60 seconds with, I don't know, Mark Cuban, and that's all you get. And so you've got to be able to do that 60-second pitch. For pitches like this competition where you have 3 to 5 minutes, 10 slides is about right. So think about that in advance and really focus and hone in on what's really important to convey to the audience. So what are the questions you'll need to answer during your pitch? What is the problem that you need, or the problem or need that you are solving or providing, right? So you're either solving some sort of problem or there's something that people really want, and that's what your business is focused on providing for them. How big is the market potential and how much of that market can you access? So if it's a small market, say spinal cord injury for us, it's very difficult to raise $20 million for a pivotal trial, which is what that costs. For spinal cord injury, because there's only about 11,000 spinal cord injuries a year. And so when you do the numbers and you work out the market potential, it's just not quite great enough to attract large dollar investors. Now you might attract angel investors who care about spinal cord injury, and that changes your approach. And so you just need to know those issues about the market. What is your solution? How does it compare to other solutions, right? How does it compare to the competition? And why is it going to displace the competition? And you can talk a lot about that. And I'll show you some examples in my slide deck coming up. Who's going to pay for your technology and how much? Typically in commercial the world, you know this, right? You can figure out who these people are. You can find out who your typical customer is going to be. In the medical world, it's a little more complicated. You have hospitals, you have hospital systems, you have clinicians, you have insurance companies. It's a much more complex market if you're dealing with medical technologies to figure out who's actually going to make the decision to pay for your technology, and how much you're going to be able to charge for that is determined by many times federal agencies. What do you need to do to get to market? So you've got to convey what are the milestones, what are the major milestones I need to hit in order to, one, increase the value of the company so I can raise more money, but two, also to actually get in the market so I can start selling and making money. How long is it going to take to hit that point where I've got a return on investment for my investors? How much do you need to raise to get to those inflection points? And by inflection points, I mean the points where your company's value goes up dramatically because you've done something important for the company. How much will I make when I get, when will I get my investment back from my investors? So how long will it take, and how much do you expect for them to get back? So when you do comps, when you compare your company to other companies that are ahead of you, you can make good estimates of what your company will be valued at some point in the future. And the idea is when you're doing your rounds with your venture capitalists or your angel investors, you need to kind of give a plan for what you expect. So in our XNerve, I'll show you on our slides exactly what I project we're worth today, what we'll be worth in 18 months, and what we'll be worth in 48 months based on the milestones that we've created for XNerve. And then finally, this is the most important part. So nobody's going to invest in a team they don't believe in. So you got to show that your team has the experience, has the knowledge in order to actually execute your plan. So your pitch is, here's my plan, and then here's the people that we've got on board to help us accomplish that plan. Here's one of the first slides of my deck, and we focus on obstructive sleep apnea. And I describe what obstructive sleep apnea is so that the people who are watching know what it is. So obstructive sleep apnea is when your tongue relaxes and blocks your airway while you're sleeping, and that cuts off airflow to your lungs and obviously oxygen to your brain. With patients with obstructive sleep apnea, this happens over 15 to 30 times per minute and is very devastating, right? So this is a major problem. Why is it a major problem? Well, if you don't treat obstructive sleep apnea, you have a 200% increased risk of having a stroke and a 5 times increased risk of having a fatal cardiovascular event. You also have a chance of developing hypertension and diabetes. These are massive problems, which means your mortality goes down, and so you want to treat it. This is a big problem and it should be treated. So the point of those 2 slides was quick introduction into what we're doing and why we're doing it, and why it's so important that we develop this technology. That gives you a sense of how valuable it might be to people. And then here's the big one for investors. How big is the actual market? Well, for us, there's 2 million new CPAP users each year, so positive air pressure, where they force air down your throat or up your nose to open up the airway, open up the blocked airway. About half of the people that start CPAPs stop using them within a week or 2. Of those million people that stop using it, about 70% are good candidates for what we call hypoglossal nerve stimulation. That means there's about 700,000 people a year that are candidates for our technology, hypoglossal nerve stimulation. We know the FDA, through the FDA approval process and reimbursement strategies, we'll end up getting about $27,000 per device. So if you do the math, $27,000 per device times 700,000 patients a year, if I were able to implant everybody, that's about a $20 billion a year market. So this gives you a sense of the market size, the opportunity, that I don't have to capture 50% of the market to actually make decent money. Here, I've only got to capture 1 or 2% of the market to really do well. So here's our solution. So the picture on the left is our implantable device. It's a implantable stimulator that goes on the hypoglossal nerve. And I'm showing you the size and scale of the device. On the right is a picture of how it's manufactured in wafers. And then we compare it to the other technologies that are currently on the market. So Inspire Medical is the only company on the market right now selling hypoglossal nerve stimulators. And their device is a large 60cc can that goes in your chest with a wire that goes up to the nerve under your tongue. So that nerve, that hypoglossal nerve, is what's innervated your tongue and causes your tongue to move forward while you're sleeping and open up the airway. Our device, since it's small and glass and it doesn't have a battery, it has no leads, it goes right on the nerve and it's powered externally. And so I go over the competition, what they're doing, what we're doing, and you can see just by my pictures, I'm trying to show there's a big difference between these two solutions. Here, then I go into a little bit more difference between the competition and our device. So our surgery is about an hour long. Theirs is actually about 4 hours long. They have to have their battery replaced every 7 years or so. We don't have a battery. Ours never needs to be replaced. They can't have a full body scan with MRI. We can. It doesn't matter. Our device is glass. It doesn't heat up. It doesn't rotate or move in the magnetic field. So you can have full MRI scans. So I go through all the benefits of our technology and compare it to the other technologies. And then here's just another sheet of, there's another company coming up and I talk about what we're doing that they're not. So those comparisons really give our investors an opportunity to see, okay, you know the competition, you know what they're doing, and what you're doing is important and different, and you're going to be able to distinguish yourself in the marketplace. And then we come to who's going to actually pay for this. So the doctors don't pay for the implants, but the doctors are the ones that recommend to your patients what technology to select. And the doctors are basing their decision on, one, what's the best care for you, but also if, say, our device is just as good as the Inspire device, what's the benefit to the surgeon, right? That's a secondary question, but it's an important question. One, it takes about 1/3 of the time to implant, so they can do more devices in a day and help more patients, and they get reimbursed the same amount. So financially, they can do 2 or 3 implants with our device versus 1 with the other device. So financially, time-wise, as long as our device is as good or better than the other competition, the surgeon's going to recommend our device probably. What about the hospital? Well, once again, the hospital has to set aside time for the surgery suites for the surgeons to operate in. If they're setting aside 4 hours for Inspire and 2 hours or an hour and a half for XNerve device, then they can schedule more surgeries at $4,300 reimbursement per surgery. And if they're doing twice as many surgeries a day for the hospital, that's a great return on investment, especially if you're just reducing the time in the surgery suite for the same outcome. And so these are the people that I know I need to talk to and convince to focus on using our device and not the competition. Now, how do I get there? How do I get to a point where investors actually end up making money? And how long is it going to take, and how much am I going to have to raise? And so you can see on the top are the major items that I have to accomplish in order to get to the market. You can see FDA interactions. I have to do some preclinical studies. I have to develop some technology. I have to do my first early feasibility study of 20 patients starting mid-2022. And then in 2024, I start the big pivotal trial. And this is the trial where the FDA says you can actually sell your device in the market. And I'm showing you, hey, we probably won't get FDA approval to be in the market till the end of 2027. So anybody who's wanting to invest in XNerve now knows it's 6 years before I actually get in the market. Now, we all know that probably in 2024, 2025, when we start the pivotal, other companies, Biomedical probably, or Rennaker, a couple others who are in the space, may want to have a conversation with us about acquiring our technology because they don't want their technology to be displaced. So you could have an exit as early as 2024. But we project out what we think is reasonable. So we think 2027, when we get FDA approval, that's when we'll have the greatest value. And I'll show you what our valuations are at each of those inflection points. But our funding is based on those inflection points. So you can see our seed round, we've already raised for the $20 million valuation on our seed round. And we've raised about $1 million so far. And that will take us out to mid-2022, where we do our early feasibility study. We'll then have to raise $10 million to run that study, and then we'll have to raise $25 million to run the pivotal. And so I'm telling my investors exactly what I need to do, what I need to raise, and when I'm going to do it. And that's important because when I start talking about comps and other companies and what their value was at these points, it's important because that's going to tell them when they're going to make money and how much their stock is going to increase. So here we're showing slides from other companies and ours compared about what the company was worth, how much they raised as a function of the point in time. So here you can see on the top right curve, you can see early feasibility study, when the first IDE was approved, and then when they got FDA approval, how much money that these companies raised. We're projecting to raise $37 million. whereas Nyxoah has raised about 180 million. Inspire raised 72 million. Right now, Inspire, after they got FDA approval, was worth $5 billion. Actually, today they're worth $6 billion. Nyxoah, who just started their pivotal trials, is on the New York Stock Exchange, worth 750 million. So if today we're saying, hey, we're worth 20 million here, that's about right. Our comps were similar. And then as we move to our first in human study, we'll be worth 100 million or 200 million, somewhere in that range. And then after we get FDA approval, we should be worth $500 million. And these are just based on the numbers that are out there. These are probably very conservative because the medical device market is rapidly growing and these valuations are probably low at this point, but it at least gives investors some sense of the magnitude of the potential of their investment. And then what I do is I take those numbers and I put them into, okay, I'm going to raise $20 million on my seed round at $200 per share. So I've got 100,000 shares. What's that valuation? How much am I going to raise? How much of my investors going to be diluted down? And I do that for the seed round, the Series A, and the Series B. And by doing that, they can see exactly how much money they're going to make, what their shares are going to be worth at the end of the day when we actually get to that $200 million valuation. And so the point is the investor now has all the information they need to make a decision whether they want to invest in us or not. And then finally, I usually close with what's the opportunity. So it's an $18 billion market. There's one competitor in the market. They're worth $6 billion today, actually. We have a better implant for the patient, the hospital, and the doctor. We already have 3 IDEs approved for other nerves. There's been 28 million in non-dilutive funding that's come in. So you're coming in at the ground floor. We have well-established reimbursement, and we have a superior team who's been doing this for 30 years. Each one of these people have been in the medical device and technology and development and startups and knows what they're doing. We will be able to execute. And that's how I finished. So now what? So you've put together this great deck. You've won the competition, and what's the next step? Well, first you got to prepare to license out the technology. So if you haven't done that already, you got to have the technology in your company in order to receive the funds from the competition. And that can take 2 to 3 months, depending on what status the technology is in, if it's not done already. Make sure you have your company documents in order, your EINs, your bank accounts, and other things that you need so that there's a place for the money to go, and we can document the transfer of those funds and all that. Learn about what types of expenses are reimbursable. So the team is really good at giving you a sheet of what's reimbursable, what's not. And you need to know that so when you're spending, you know what you're going to get reimbursed for and what you're not. And then finally, you need to track your expenses. And hopefully, if you're a businessman at all or a woman at all, you'll be tracking your expenses so you'll know, hey, I've spent my 100,000. It's time to spend, our money and dilute ourselves out. And then finally, you got to do it for real. So you got to go out and raise 5 million, 10 million, whatever it is you need to actually make your company a success. All right, and that's the end of my presentation.
Great, thank you, Dr. Rennicker. That was excellent information. It looks like we have some questions coming in. So what was the most challenging part of your competition experience?
I think it was learning to make the business case versus how great our technology is, right? We all believe in our technology and we want to focus on that because we know it. We can tell you 1,000 reasons why it's the best and we'll destroy the competition. But if I can't make the business case, I can't tell you why you need to invest $35 million over the next 7 years and it's going to take us 7 years, then I'm not going to raise money. So it was just learning that. And it was learning that I've got to make my slides very clear. Nobody is really paying attention to the slides. They're listening to you. They're looking at the slides to fill in some information. But if you're reading off your slides, you're doing it wrong. I think those were my biggest lessons.
Right, yeah, focusing on the business versus the technology, that really resonated with me in your talk because, being involved with tech transfer for so long and working with researchers that are very, very, very focused on the technology, that is something we kind of have to take a step back with and talk to them about what is, how does this is a different way of doing something, but is it better? And if it is better, how much better is it? And is it going to compel, people to change and adopt this solution instead of the current technologies? So what factors should someone consider when weighing creating a startup versus just licensing a technology out to an existing company? And when is creating a startup the right path?
Oh, so this is for me, being a former Marine, I've dedicated my life to helping, our soldiers and veterans who have sacrificed for us, who are injured on the battlefield, who are injured in service, get some functional recovery. And there's not a lot of solutions for neurological injuries today. So my take has always been that's my focus. And it's just turned out that when you start working with outside companies, you lose control, which is, for faculty, it's difficult. But if they execute, that's wonderful. You've got to find the right partner. So if you're going to license it out, you have to trust that they've got the same vision and mission for you and your technology that you'd be comfortable with. Or maybe they just say, hey, we're just in this to make a lot of money. And you go, okay, I'm letting go and go do your thing. I can still do my research at the university, but I got to let go of it. For me, the problem is that model of just making money means that a lot of people who need the technology aren't going to get access to it. So when we formed XNerve, we also formed a nonprofit foundation that's going to be able to provide our technology to people, underrepresented people who can't afford it. And so I've been able to form this coalition where we can make a lot of money and do a lot of good at the same time. And for me, that was the difference of having that creative control to guide the technology forward, given that this is my life's passion. That's what I wanted to do.
Okay, very good, thank you. Did you receive any coaching or mentoring that helped you prepare for the competition?
Yeah, Dresden was great. So she listened to my pitch 2 or 3 times. The Capital Factory team also listened to the pitch a couple of times from the BDC. So yeah, I had a lot of practice before I started. That was very, very helpful.
Very good. So knowing what you know now, if you could go back and do the BIC over again, what would you do differently? You won, so maybe not much, but.
I don't know. It was a great experience all around. I think maybe, well, I don't know. I didn't know what I didn't know when I started it. And, so I can't say I'd do something differently necessarily because I learned as I went forward. So I don't think there's much I would change beyond maybe starting the licensing earlier, but that would be premature because I hadn't won and didn't have the money. And so yeah, I don't think there's much I would change. I would encourage people, take advantage of the resources that the team provides, practice, pitch to people, and don't just pitch and go, well, of course, don't get upset if somebody doesn't understand it or doesn't like it. Figure out why they don't like it or don't understand it and fix it. And that's really the big thing that I learned was just there can't be an ego here. You just got to figure out what's wrong, what needs to be fixed, and keep fixing it. And I spent a lot of time just practicing and practicing. So.
Okay, great. Now, and not limited to just your BIC experience, but because you and your team have been working on this technology for a long, long time. So over the development of the technology and your work in commercializing this, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced along the commercialization path, and how did you address them?
This is, so with most commercial technologies, you build it, you get, some minimum viable product where you can get it in front of potential consumers and they can say, yeah, we love it or we hate it. And you can adjust it and you can modify it and you can make it better. With medical devices, you don't have that luxury. You've got to build it right the first time. You've got to build it according to a quality system, and you've got to get FDA approval. And so a lot of things are out of your hands. And so from my perspective, that's been one of the most challenging pieces, is putting together the team that can actually execute and get this stuff done. And, conveying to potential investors, look, yeah, it's going to be 7 years before we're in the market. And it's probably going to be 4 or 5 more years before there's a return on investment from the company directly. But the valuation at these inflection points is where your stock goes from being valued at 20 million to 50 to 200, right? In 3 or 4 short years. And then hopefully somebody comes in and buys us out. And so it's putting all that information together and conveying in a way that really helps people understand. And for me, that learning that process and understanding that process was the most important thing. Because once again, I was stuck in, of course, my technology is better than everybody else. I developed it, right? That's just our egos, and that's not going to sell anybody. So for me, that was, I think, the most challenging part.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And lastly, what is your long-term vision for XNerve?
To revolutionize the treatment of neurological injury and disease, and empower people to get back the full potential they lost after that injury. I mean, XNerve, with our technology that we've developed, our manufacturing process, we can do that. And the competition is still using technology from the 60s and 70s. And there's just a lot of things that we've done because we've had the luxury of time, 12, 13 years of development, to build the device specifically. A lot of people take a hammer and they try to find a nail for it. We built the hammer to hit the perfect nail. And so for me, I think, whether it's hypoglossal or vagus nerve stimulation, the devices are just an order of magnitude better than what's currently available. And if everything works, then we will change the world, and people will be able to get devices, that otherwise would be cost prohibitive. And I think medicine in the United States is going to change. I don't think we can afford a $50,000 pacemaker, much longer, because the medical system is just not capable of doing that. And I think when that happens, our technology is positioned, because it's so inexpensive to manufacture, that we'll be able to survive in those new conditions. So.
Yeah, the slide where you compare the current solution to yours is very impactful. I mean, it's obvious the benefit of going from this large implantable can to your small device is just very, very clear. So that's a great slide. So, well, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your experience with your big competition win. And now I'd like to hand it over to Dresden to tell us more about this year's upcoming BIC.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dresden Goldberg. I'm the Director of Programs and Operations for the Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And I wanted to say thank you all for joining us today for Lab to Launch. I have a few things to share with you about the 2021 Big Idea Competition. First of all, Big Idea Competition applications are open now. And we are offering 3 tracks again this year. We have the student track, the alumni track, and the research commercialization track. The student track applications close on September 26th, and the alumni and research commercialization track applications close on October 3rd. All applications are located on our startup tree, which is at utdallas.startuptree.co. And this year we are offering $25,000 each to the student track and alumni track grand prize winners, and $100,000 to the research commercialization track winner. Now, the Office of Research and Innovation and the Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship believe that it is important to support the runners up in the competition as well, so that their startups don't stop at the competition. And so this year, additional funding has been deployed, and we are offering the runners up in the student and alumni tracks each $5,000. And in the research commercialization track, the runners up will receive $25,000 each. In addition to the UT Dallas tracks, Capital Factory is also offering a $50,000 investment challenge, which is open to all digital health and biotech startups in Texas. So any startup in this industry in Texas is eligible to apply, and that link is also on our startup tree. So we hope to see your applications really soon. If you can believe it, the applications close in just a couple weeks, so get those in. And I also want to mention to save the dates for the finals competition, which is November 2nd and 3rd, and then the award ceremony will take place on November 9th. We look forward to seeing you there. And now I will hand it back to Enrica.
Thank you so much, Dresden, and Brent and Dr. Rennicker, for sharing your time and giving us some unique insight to this epic competition. And audience, thank you for joining us today. Thank you and have a great afternoon, everyone.
Welcome to the UT Dallas Venture Development Center. Innovation starts here. The Office of Research and Innovation designed the VDC in 2011 as an incubator to assist students, faculty, staff, and alumni to commercialize their ideas and inventions. This is done through targeted one-to-one support, enabling ventures to identify and build relationships with key industry partners, investors, entrepreneurs, and others to help them succeed. The VDC offers 20,000 square feet of dedicated office, lab, and meeting space, as well as shared business services and equipment. We help companies build out their teams, protect their intellectual property, and connect with expert advisors. We work to get minimum viable products into customers' hands and prove a viable, scalable business model. For startups, we help founders identify investor options, write and rehearse their company pitch, and navigate funding terms and other questions. For researchers and inventors seeking industry connections for translational research and licensing, we help identify partners, make introductions, and identify commercialization paths, including licensing agreements, IP assignments, and other contracting alternatives. The VDC, in coordination with the Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, the Blackstone Launchpad, and the Office of Research and Innovation, offers VDC members the opportunity to participate in mentor networks, a variety of training programs, networking events, and student intern programs. Our other amenities include 6 large conference rooms, 24/7 key card access to additional lab equipment and instruments through our core program, telecommunications with high-speed internet and Wi-Fi access, printer, scanner, copier access, lunchroom with unlimited coffee, teas, and filtered water. We also have additional educational opportunities available. To become a member, companies complete a simple application and are interviewed by our innovation team. Membership is on a month-to-month basis and can be canceled with 30 days notice. For more information, please visit our website, venture.utdallas.edu.